Welcome to the documentary from the BBC World Service, where we report the world, however difficult the issue, however hard to reach. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
Planning a summer break? Experience the best of Ireland, inside and out at Clayton Hotels. With nationwide destinations, you can soak up amazing coastline views. Then soak in the atmosphere in our welcoming bars and spacious lounges. Squeeze in local attractions, then stretch out in our big family rooms. Enjoy endless adventures, followed by meals made to thrill. Delicious. And heavenly moments alongside real luxury. For the best rates, always book on ClaytonHotels.com.
At Centra, we appreciate the power of choice. We know that ultimately choices define us. For example, attitude is a choice. Positivity, kindness, respect, all choices. Supporting your community, that's a choice too, and a really positive one at that. That's why every day our retailers choose community and are helping to contribute to a more vibrant Ireland for today and tomorrow. Choices define us. Choose wisely. Choose to live every day. Centra. Live every day.
On the Podium Season 2 is available now.
Like many people in this world, I had never seen an Olympic medal before.
Bringing you more remarkable stories of Olympic and Paralympic athletes and their incredible journeys to the podium.
This is my dream and it came true that day.
Find out more at the end of this podcast.
Hello, I'm James Reynolds on the BBC World Service, and this is BBC Earth Conversations on Boris Johnson. After a dramatic and unprecedented 48-hour period when more than 50 members of his own government resigned, the UK's Prime Minister says that he is stepping down after losing the confidence of members of Parliament and many of their constituents.
I've supported Mr Johnson through thick and thin, through Brexit, through the pandemic, through Partygate, you name it, I've supported him. But unfortunately, I have had to say enough is enough.
When Boris Johnson became Prime Minister in July 2019, it was because his predecessor, Theresa May, couldn't reach an acceptable deal on Brexit, the UK's decision to withdraw from the European Union. After May's resignation, Conservative Party members, not the public, voted Boris Johnson into power. When he called a general election 5 months later, pledging to finally get Brexit done, Boris Johnson delivered the largest Conservative majority, 80 seats, since Margaret Thatcher back in the late 1980s. Areas of the UK that had only ever voted for the Labour Party opposition switched sides to Conservative, also known as Tory, for the first time. With his relentlessly upbeat persona, his trademark unruly blonde hair and his tendency to make off-the-cuff comments, Boris Johnson was a formidable campaigner and vote winner. But less than 3 years later, following a series of scandals and by-election defeats, the Prime Minister appeared outside his offices at number 10 Downing Street to give his own resignation speech.
And of course, I'm immensely proud of the achievements of this government, from getting Brexit done to settling our relations with the continent for over half a century.
During his time in office, Boris Johnson, like all leaders around the world, had to deal with a number of unexpected global situations. The pandemic, the economic fallout of war in Ukraine, and the ongoing cost of living crisis. But it was questions over his character that brought him down. From an investigation over an expensive designer revamp of his Downing Street apartment to an attempt to rewrite the disciplinary code for MPs to help an ally who is facing suspension for breaking lobbying rules, the allegations were incessant. Then he was fined by the Metropolitan Police for breaking his own government's lockdown laws after attending boozy office gatherings, a scandal which became known as Partygate. And this was at a time when millions of ordinary people across the country were making considerable sacrifices by following the rules and not seeing friends or family. By now, the political magic that had brought Boris Johnson to power seemed to be wearing off. The Conservatives lost a series of by-elections to the Liberal Democrats and also to the main opposition Labour Party, led by Sir Keir Starmer. But the final straw for many MPs was when ministers were sent out to speak to the media to defend the Prime Minister, armed with what turned out to be misleading information in a row over an MP facing allegations of sexual misconduct. The first members of Boris Johnson's cabinet to resign included the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and the Health Minister, Sajid Javid. This triggered a snowball effect and reflected how many Conservative voters felt.
My name's Alison, I'm from Sheffield. I am glad that Boris is going. I think he has done some good things, some tough things. I'm not sure how anyone else would actually have handled the pandemic, whether they'd have done it better or worse. I do think they've turned the back on COVID, and I think there's too much going on with all the disruption in government. They can't govern because they're too busy watching their backs for the next sleaze situation to come out. I don't think he should be there until October. I think somebody like Dominic Raab should do it, obviously deputy, so that makes sense. And I cannot forget 7 months of not seeing my grandchildren, and my mum, who has dementia, being on her own in that first lockdown and it making her seemingly much worse. I can't forgive that. I didn't break the rules, and nor should he have done, and he isn't bothered that he's broke the rules.
Alison in Sheffield there, and Jan in Dunstable in central England also got in touch.
I've supported Mr Johnson through thick and thin, through Brexit, through the pandemic, through Partygate, but unfortunately I have had to say enough is enough. I'm afraid I can't support him anymore.
You hoped he would be your next Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister who was in office and won Britain's part in the Second World War, but that didn't happen.
No, unfortunately, my Winston Churchill turned out to be a paper tiger. I was really enthusiastic when he became Mayor of London, even more enthusiastic when he became Prime Minister. I thought that he would be the one to take this country to greater things, even when the pandemic hit, between himself, Rishi Sunak, and obviously all the brilliant scientists we have in this country, managed to get us through a terrible worldwide pandemic. And then all of a sudden, everything fell apart.
Do you feel that all this has damaged the Conservative Party?
Irreparably. Keir Starmer, he thought all his Christmases had come at once, because if there is a snap general election, the Conservative Party will get absolutely annihilated. Nobody will vote for them. All the people that support Labour will vote for them. The people that used to vote for the Tory Party, like myself, won't even perhaps bother to vote, because I would never bring myself to vote Labour. The Lib Dems have proved that they have nothing. So who am I going to vote for? So a lot of people won't vote at all. It has irreparably damaged the Tory party. I don't think they will ever claw this back.
Jan in Dunstable. And like Jan, husband and wife, Gavin and Deborah, are Conservative Party voters. This was their response.
He's always been a maverick. He's like a jack-in-the-box. You know, sort of he springs out when you don't want him to, and when you do want him to, he doesn't. I think his international standing is very good. His domestic standing is atrocious. And that's the split, you know, and it's very difficult sort of trying to sort of work through an average on this. You know, Ukraine is boiling away. We've now got the Chechens saying that they will come through to Berlin if they can. Now, obviously, we hope that's a false threat. But I don't see anyone else that can actually stand up as strong as Boris on this European stage.
Deborah, it's often said about prime ministers that their strengths become their weaknesses without them actually changing. So we can think back to Margaret Thatcher, who was in power for 10 years at the first. Her strong personality made her seem commanding. At the end, it made her seem dictatorial. I wondered, what do you think about Boris and his strengths becoming his weaknesses?
That's absolutely right, because we needed a strong leader for Brexit. And we needed somebody strong for COVID. And actually, and this is my real dilemma, is we do need somebody strong for the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And I just think to myself that you get to a stage where, as you say, Boris's strengths and now his weaknesses.
The problem I've got is who takes over.
Yeah.
That is a serious question, and I can't answer it. And okay, to a certain extent, you can't answer it because until someone gets in situ, you don't see their worth. You know, being sort of a minister is not being the Prime Minister. But going forward, I don't see anyone as strong as Boris. I don't see that anyone is there that can do what he's doing at the moment.
Gavin and Deborah. You heard Gavin mention that he thought Boris Johnson's international standing was much better than his domestic one. Many people in Ukraine, for instance, are grateful for his support. But the Prime Minister and his government have a very different reputation elsewhere in Europe. The issue of Brexit continues to cause considerable friction. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is known for her tough stance on immigration. The UK now has a policy to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda. To get a sense of what people in the rest of Europe think about Boris Johnson, I spoke to the UK correspondent for the French radio station RTL, who's Marie Billon, and joining us from Belgium, the senior Europe correspondent for Deutsche Welle, Barbara Weissel.
It's sort of a mix of fascination, horror, and, you know, the nice German word Schadenfreude.
Yeah, we know that word. Pleasure in the misfortune of others.
English language, exactly. That people are watching this. I mean, the point here is that among European leaders, Boris Johnson hasn't made any friends, really. Because as opposed to get Brexit done in a nice neighborly fashion and then afterwards all being friends again, he has sort of kept on poking around in it recently with the threat to the Northern Ireland Protocol. And everybody in Europe, in European capitals, particularly in Berlin, thinks, I mean, for heaven's sake, we've got other problems. Why touch this now? Just leave it alone. Everyone has the same problems, really, with inflation, with rising prices, with the war in Ukraine, and so on. And now this man pokes with a stick in this sort of not quite resolved point after Brexit. So that is one of the big issues here. There are not going to be any tears shed after Boris Johnson has stepped down. He really hasn't endeared himself to any of the other Europeans, except one big exception, that is his really firm support for Ukraine and the war with Russia. That, of course, has garnered some admiration, but the rest is just, as they say, cringe-inducing.
Marie Billon, correspondent for the French radio station RTL. How is Boris Johnson seen in France?
He's not seen as a serious politician. I mean, the president, for example, said it himself that Boris Johnson is not really serious.
Did he call him a clown at one stage, or was that a mistranslation?
I think it's pretty accurate. That's certainly the sentiment. I mean, they got on well a few days ago in the G7, and they restarted their bromance. That's how basically Boris Johnson wants to put it, because one of the things that's for sure makes no doubt in the French commentators' analysis is that Emmanuel Macron is making friend with Boris Johnson, thinking we don't have long to wait. He's on the out, and we just have to make nice until we've got someone else who's going to be more serious. Of course, he won't say that out loud. He can't say that, of course, but that's certainly the hope that basically French and UK relationship can be restarted with someone who's perhaps more honest in a way and more open to solving the problem that can be only solved by those two countries. Like, for example, the channel crossings is something France and the UK has to work a lot on it. And Boris Johnson has been accused by France to try and just want to please his electorate and not trying to solve the issue, whereas France wants to basically work on it very, very clearly. So for all these reasons, Boris Johnson is seen as, well, maybe a clown, but at least someone with whom we can't really, go ahead with the several issues that we have to sort out.
And Barbara Weissel in Germany. We've seen a lot of British politics of its typical features. We've seen members of Parliament getting up and shouting at each other on really bitter arguments in public in Parliament. That's part of the feature of the system. When you and your audience look at all this, do you think, it's good to see people arguing, or do you think that gets you nowhere, better to have consensus?
Of course, basically, particularly in Germany, the electorate thinks it's better to have consensus. Have one of these really boring governments like we enjoy at the moment, three parties sort of very carefully not stepping on each other's toes and searching consensus like to a fault. And of course, everybody looks across the channel also from Brussels and thinks, wow, you get a lot of entertainment for your money. You get a government that doesn't probably really govern. I mean, they really failed on in that part. But the sheer entertainment value just beats any series on Netflix and any other streaming channel. I mean, this is just live drama and